It's always worse when the garage is full of people. There's 5 people in the garage all looking at me. Right. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got, the car doesn't really matter. What matters in this video is the engine. We've got a 651, 220, maybe 250 diesel Mercedes engine, obviously. What we're going to cover on this is common oil leaks. This engine, 651 engine, is common for 2 oil leaks. One is the rocker cover and the second is the oil cooler. So I'll show you the first problem. If you look inside the rocker cover, you can see that oil is pooling up inside there. Put a tissue down there and pull it out. You can see it's full of oil. So that's the first problem. To cure that, we replace the full rocker cover rather than risk just changing the gasket. It's a plastic rocker cover. There is a chance of it warping. So just to be super safe, we change the full cover with a gasket. And the second problem is the oil filter housing itself, which is part of an oil cooler system. And the seals that bolt to the side of the engine start leaking and it makes a right mess. We'll send the car up, we'll go underneath and I'll show you how bad the oil leak is. It's quite a bit of a strip down to get this done. This vacuum box has to come off, the EGR cooler has to come off, all different sorts of bracketry has to come off. It's quite an involved job. John, that's just come in now, is actually doing it, so I'm just kind of going to narrate the job. As part of this job, you get a full coolant and an oil and filter change. The reason being, we have to drain both oil and coolant to do the job because it's mixing in and out of there. We don't want cross-contamination. You get a brand new filter cartridge and filter in your new cooler. So last thing we want is old oil going through that. Here is a brand new oil cooler. I'd highly recommend just buying a Mercedes one. I think it's about 100 quid. That is quite a substantial part for 100 quid. And if I turn it over, you can see here all the seals, obviously they get weak and start leaking. And that is the oil cooler side. So coolant runs through this section here. As you can see, it's got a brand new cartridge in it, which has got a filter in it. So it's getting a fresh change as well. So we'll send the car up and then we'll show you how bad the leak is underneath. Right, so if you come underneath the car, you can see there's oil all over the sump, front subframe. It's just making a bit of a mess, to be honest. See it all over the steering rack. I also forgot to add, enjoying that? Reese, just caught Reese playing with the parts.
That sounded naughty.
I also forgot to add, whilst we're doing this job, we also replace this fuel filter housing, which is a very common part to fail and also causes a coolant leak. Whilst we're in there stripping all that down to do that, that is very easy to replace. This part is about 30 quid. We're ensuring we've got the latest part on it. It's a great while you're in there. We're changing the coolant anyway, so for an extra 30 quid, you're covering another common fault.
It's a bit coked, isn't it?
Right, as we can see, John's making really good progress. Let's have a look what's off so far. While we're doing this job, it's a really good opportunity to get a lot of cleaning done. A diesel engine produces a lot of carbon. All these components we're taking off, we're going to clean all the carbon off before they go back in. Even though it might not be on camera. We did a job quite a while ago and a lot of people were like, oh, you didn't clean this, you didn't clean that. I'm not going to film myself scraping carbon off for 2 hours. Anyway, throttle body. Got to remove the throttle body to get this off again. There's a lot of carbon build-up on there, so we'll clean that off. There's a lot of carbon buildup in there as well. Sometimes when we take this part off, like 50% of it can be coked up, I'll say, so you're losing a lot of power. EGR cooler, these are becoming more and more problematic on these 651s for blocking up, giving low EGR flow, because this is blocking up and the air isn't travelling in and out quick enough. But it's quite an easy part to replace that. So as you can see in here now, we're making more and more access, but we're still not at a position we can get this off. This is the fuel filter housing, which the coolant runs through it. So once we've got all this section off, that gives us tons more room to replace that. So that is why that is a good while you're in there. It's really common. We're not going to charge any more labour to change it while we're there. It's probably half an hour tops. We've drained the coolant anyway. So John's going to keep digging away. And then once we get to a position where we've exposed the cooler, we'll show you. Right, so we've got, well, I've not got, John's got off the fuel filter housing we were talking about, and as I was explaining, this is the section it leaks from, and that seal has gone really flat, so that was definitely worth doing and was going to be a problem at some stage in this car's life. Also, that can fail on these is these plastic bits. They get really brittle, and I've even seen them snap off, causing a big coolant leak, so that was definitely a good call. So a bit more room accessing the oil filter / cooler housing. We are getting there. A few more bolts to do underneath the inlet manifold, and we're there. As you can see, he's had to undo all the wiring harness to gain access. So not long left now, and we'll get that off.
Having the wee.
Old cooler out. Let that drip on there. As you can see now, there's still not really much room in there, even though we've got it out. Yes, we've got it out now. We've given it all a good clean to refit the new one. That is the seals that leak. They're the oil feed lines, these two here. And it just makes a right mess. Get the new one on, get it built up, clean everything as we go, decarbonise everything as much as we can, and then we can do the oil leak from the rocker cover. It's probably a full day's work this to do everything that we're doing. It's quite an expensive job, even though the part is quite cheap, but when you start adding up the rocker cover, oil change, coolant change, it does add up. So we'll go through costs at the end, but so far so good, everything's going to plan. Right, John's ploughed on putting it all back together. New oil cooler's in place, fuel filter housing is in place, everything back together. He's now took the rocker cover off, so I can show you a bit better why we're doing that. If you have a look in here, I tried to demonstrate before with some tissue, all that is full of oil. So basically it's leaking past the gasket, across there and into there. So we are going to replace the full rocker cover just in case it's warped. And then oil and filter change, fill and bleed the coolant system, and that's it. All the injectors are coded to each cylinder. They have a small code and a QR code on top of the injector, and that's why we've marked them up. So that's number 1, that's number 2, etc, etc. It's very important that these go back in the same cylinders that they came out of, otherwise the car's not going to run properly. The bolts that hold the injectors in place are one-time use bolts, so we replace all of those. The copper washers that sit on the bottom of the injectors are one-time use. The only thing that isn't is the injector clamps. However, we do change them as well. I have seen the feet of the clamps wear out before, so we always change them. We've got to take them off, so we may as well change them. Not come across any problems with this job so far. So far, so good. We'll get the new rocker cover on, show you building it back up, and then we'll show you the bleed procedure. Right, so the new rocker cover is on, all torqued down, 9 newton meters all the way around. Injectors are going in. John's just putting on some special grease to stop them seizing in. Should they ever need to come out in the future, it's going to make someone else's life a lot easier. And then we need to get all the wiring back in. Not much left to do really. The new washer that goes on the end is a tiny little washer, and that is what seals the injector to the cylinder head. It's not much really, is it? You'd want something a little bit more substantial than that. Injector bolts are 20 newton meters.
Yep, 20 newtons.
Click, click. So yeah, we're on the home run now, so get all these injectors in, get all the wiring loom plugged back in, and then we'll see what she starts up like. They can be a pain to start. And then once it's running, we will do the coolant bleed, which we actually do on the diagnostic machine. So it's got fresh coolant, fresh oil, and we'll go from there. Right, everything's back together, fully built up, full of coolant, full of oil. So this is its first start up. So we'll see if it starts easy or not. Just priming the fuel system to get all the fuel up to the rail. There's a couple of ignition cycles. Hey! Didn't think that was going to go then. Right, we've finally got it started. That's took about half an hour to get that started up. It does take a while to bleed the high pressure diesel circuit system on this car. We've got a very, very slight misfire, which is quite typical when we've opened up the diesel system. We've introduced air into the system. We need to get that air out, but a good road test usually sorts that out. But it's up and it's running. We've just ran it through the Diagnostics, one, because there's a bleed procedure for the high pressure diesel circuit, and two, there is 20-minute flush for the coolant circuit that you also do on the Diagnostics. So it's been on the ramp doing that for that duration of time. Now all we need to do is put the under trays back on, take it down the road. After we've done that, bring it back in the garage, back on the ramp for inspection, check oil level, coolant level. It's getting a bit late now, so we will be going home shortly, and it's dark, so I'll see you in the morning. Right, so that is the first road test done, and I'm just checking all the injector rail lines, all the leak off pipes, just make sure we've got no leaks or anything like that. And then we'll do one final road test. We've checked oil level, coolant level, so we're all ready to go. It's actually the next day now as well. Just checking that no oil's come back in the top of the engine, but everything seems bone dry, so that's good. Right, this is a brand new engine cover. His old engine cover was missing. I don't know what's happened there, so this is brand spanker. I think this engine cover is about 200 quid. Right, I'll take you on the final road test and we shall go through prices, bearing in mind 200 quid's worth of the bill is that brand new cover. As I was explaining, we always do one road test, get the car back in, check we've got no fuel or oil leaks or anything like that, because we've had a lot of parts off. Reserve fuel light is on. I never get that when people bring the cars in for like major work. They always bring them in empty. You know, this is my third road test. I've probably done 10-15 miles. The car's been probably running for an hour in the workshop, just checking levels and stuff. So put fuel in your cars when you bring it into the garage. The garage will be highly appreciative of that. It's half the time we can't do our testing as much as we'd like because of fuel. Anyway, That's my Friday morning whinge. Come on. So those are, in my opinion, the two main oil leaks on the 651 engine. They're the ones we see the most anyway. Oil cooler and rocker cover / gasket leaking. If you own a 651 and you gotta own it long term and those jobs have never been done, at some point you're probably gonna need them doing. At what mileage? I don't know. This car's done just shy of 100,000 miles and it's required it. The one I did last week, the car had done 250,000 miles. I think that's the proof that there's no pattern to it really. So yeah, definitely one to look out for if you're a 651 engine owner. Which brings me on to price. How much does this cost? Well, bearing in mind he's had an engine cover as well at £200. When we do the oil cooler, we also replace the oil. The cooler comes with a new filter inside it, so we always flush the oil out. We always drain the coolant system and replace with fresh coolant. So, you know, you are incurring slightly extra costs. We replace the whole rocker cover if it's got a leak, just to avoid any comebacks in case the rocker cover is warped. I'd hate to do the gasket and do it all again. The little extras we do with the injectors, you have to replace the bolts and the washers, but we replace the clamps as well. The fuel filter housing, I didn't have to replace that, but the customer's not getting charged anymore to do that, apart from the cost of the part. I think the part's £40. It's a very common coolant leak, so why not do it while you're in there? It's another job done. So bear all that in mind before I give you this cost. The total cost for this job is £1,800. Take off his engine cover, £1,600. If we didn't replace the rocker cover, I think the rocker cover alone is about £200. You could probably knock another £200 off and just replace the gasket and try your luck, but I'd hate to have all them injectors in and out twice. And I have to say, it is driving spot on, because really the car's had an oil change in between its service now at the same time, which is always a good thing. It's never a bad thing. And when we're doing the job, we leave the oil draining for the whole time we're doing the job. This job is a full day's work. It's a full day. So that oil is just dripping out for hours and hours and hours. So it's probably getting the best oil change it's ever had. I think I mentioned earlier on in the video, don't use aftermarket parts for this job. The proper, genuine Mercedes parts aren't expensive. The oil cooler is £120 plus VAT, and that comes with the filter and the filter cartridge inside it. Someone's at my front door. So that's a bit of a bargain. It's not worth saving 20 quid to get an aftermarket one. Again, with the fuel filter housing, you can buy aftermarket ones, but the proper one is 40 quid. Put the genuine one on it. So that's a couple of common jobs covered on the 651 engine. We will probably get some more videos done on the 651. This engine goes in so many models, it will appeal to a lot of viewers. They're quite common for quite a number of jobs. I won't spoil it. If you'd like to see more common jobs done on this particular engine, leave us a comment below. It's actually not a bad little engine. I mean, this is, for a diesel, is really smooth. You either get a really smooth one or a terrible one that's drives like a transit van. And I'm convinced it's down to good maintenance. So I think that concludes this video. Make sure you give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't done already. Also, make sure to check out our merchandise. I will leave a link in the description below for that. The hoodies seem to be selling pretty well, so thanks to everyone who has already bought a hoodie, because the small amount of profit we make out of it is all going back in the pot to continue with the YouTube. because this takes so much time and effort. It's crazy, actually. However, we're growing month on month thanks to you guys. We get great responses from it, so we'll keep going. So thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.